call this June 23rd council workshop to order, and we will start with Ed Harbin.
Mayor, Council, good morning. We do a lot of these, but this one I'm particularly excited about. This is recognizing a member for years of service, and this person has been here for 20 years and has been a phenomenal employee for the town. I want to bring up Brian Stanberry. Surprised him for this. Brian started out, he told me a story when he started. He was actually working in public works, and he was down at the marina, and he was taking out, hauling the trash, and he opened up the trash, and there was the head of a giant shark. And then he's like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? And then the next trash can, there was the tail. So, he moved up from there and started working in stormwater, and really on the job learned all the equipment. The crews loved him and really united with him as a leader, and the town saw that, how his leadership style was very positive for the crew, and his personality worked well with the community, and they moved him up to manage stormwater, and then he went on to manage the public works department and continues to manage stormwater, and has managed quite a bit with the town. As you know, he does a lot with our parking program, streets and signs, and a little bit of everything, and has always been my go-to guy, and I love the guy, and I think every manager he's been the go-to guy, and council as well. So just want to say thank you to Brian. That's why you have me here.
So Brian, we love you too, and I think you know that, and let's get a picture. We'll get a picture with Ed, and we just want to thank you for your commitment to the town of Carolina Beach and to our citizens of Carolina Beach.
Did you keep the shark? Hey, Brian, don't go away so fast, Brian, because 20 years really is a milestone. I mean, that's a huge commitment to the community, and I personally have always appreciated your calmness. We've had some big storms. You've got guys prepped. There's been a lot of stress, and you get a lot of feedback from neighbors that never seem to be happy with anything, and you just calmly deal with it. And whether it's individual stormwater problems or community-wide problems, and taking on new responsibilities, and I just really appreciate that and the leadership that you've demonstrated. So personally, I want to say thank you.
Thanks, sir. Agreed.
Good job, Brian. Chief Griffin.
Mayor, Council, thank you guys for allowing me to come and speak this morning to how the town is prepared for the 2020 hurricane season. I think it's important that you guys have a lot of confidence in what staff's doing, and I appreciate the manager allowing me to present this to you guys. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about the anatomy of a disaster. And I put 2020 under it because I think we could all agree 2020 is probably been a trial for everybody. So we've already started this year off, obviously, with the COVID. We was coming right off the tail end of Dorian, and staff had to go right back in and create IEPs and start doing emergency planning for a virus. And now we're in hurricane season, and we just conducted a exercise last week, and I'm confident, and I think the manager and assistant manager is very confident that staff is well prepared for this season. But I just wanted to take a second and brief a few things for you guys. The anatomy of a disaster. So it's important that you guys understand the whole process, because it not just hurricane season, but year round. And we start that with the 4 phases of a disaster. And it starts with mitigation. And mitigation is what Jeremy does in the background with floodplain management and what we work with. Jeremy works with the hazard mitigation plan, and we do beach renourishment on a schedule. All this stuff is mitigation factors that we put in place to help us have a less effect of a storm as possible. And then it moves over into preparedness, and that's what we've been working on as staff with doing training. All of our department heads are NIM certified. Most of our assistance to the staff is fully certified, and we're already starting to work down our chain of command and getting even more people brought up into the NIMS world so that they can help out in the Emergency Operations Center. We just conducted our exercise, like I said last week, went very well. We ran it as like a tabletop. We try to do a tabletop one year and a full scale the next year. So next year, our attempt would be to do a full scale. We were actually due this year to run a full scale, but given the COVID, we needed to take a little bit more distancing precautions and things, and we didn't want people to totally get interactive in a table and be in each other's space like you have to do in a full scale. But with a tabletop, it allowed us to walk through the motions of the whole storm, and that went very well for staff. As you guys know, we presented that we updated the EOC, and a lot of positive feedback from the last exercise of the monitors and the mapping stuff that we're doing, and just giving staff the tools and putting it in their hands so that they can be better prepared to plan for a disaster. Then we respond during a disaster, and that's when we activate our EOC. And we'll get a little bit more in depth in that here in just a little bit. And that involves our town staff. And then there's the operational response, and that's public works and public utilities and police and fire. And we're all, kind of the boots on the ground, but in the background, it's the staff in that room that's planning and preparing for the next operational period is what makes all this a well-oiled machine. In our recovery efforts, this is where we come in with damage assessment, debris management, and we start requesting local, state, and federal aid. And that's kind of the 4 phases that you guys work through. And the most importantly is that we're funding mitigation efforts, and then during a response that you guys are involved in that. And that's what we're going to kind of focus the rest of the presentation on, is how you guys help us during that response phase. But I didn't want to belittle the part where we need your support financially through mitigation, and then obviously recovery. In some aspects, we don't have a lot of choice of what it costs, but we do have to make hard decisions on things that get repaired and not repaired. And some of those repairs are more costly because we're falling into the mitigation phase. Okay, this messed up for this reason, so we might need to upgrade the pump, not just replace it, things like that. Here's a picture from our EOC exercise. Like I said, it went very well. We had all of our tables set up. We tried to keep everybody separated from each other. We actually had some visitors in. We put them in the middle of the room, kept them spaced out. We had the assistant emergency management director with the county was here, and she spoke multiple times about what the county's doing, so we're kind of getting attuned to that. There's some online training that they're putting together to help some of us with our situational awareness and our resource request. And of course, Mayor Pro Tem Healy, I appreciate you was able to show up, and I know, Mayor, you had some previous obligations, and we appreciate having council representation there, and because our goal is to make sure you as council are very comfortable with our capabilities as staff. So we'll talk a little bit about chain of events and how a storm ramps up, and how any disaster ramps up. Is we start off with getting notified of the event, and that could be through a weather forecast. It could be anything down to something from a planned event, a large planned event. At that point, the manager assembles what we call a control group, and that's select department heads that he feel like are subject matter experts for that said disaster. And we're talking about hurricanes, so typically it's most of our department heads come together, and out of that meeting we try to develop or establish our incident priorities and basically what are our overall objectives for that storm or that event. And then we develop an IEP, and that's where we start rolling into our operational periods and moving through operational periods. And then I think a key point when we talk about establishing those objectives, that I'm 100% confident council's on board with our thought process, and it's something that we live by is we put things in categories, and that's how we prioritize our decisions. So when we make a decision, it's not whether we're going to make a certain group of citizens upset, or it's not what's best for, another town, or what's best for one pocket of businesses. We look at life safety, we look at how we will stabilize that incident, and then we look at how we do property conservation. And that order there is how we base all of our decisions. So once life safety has been addressed, we can start addressing those other priorities. And that's how we usually set our objectives up in our operational periods. When we encourage staff to look at, for the next 12 hours, what is your priority? And those priorities start with life safety. What's the most imminent life safety issues we're dealing with? And then we look at what are we doing to stabilize this? How are we controlling flooding, or how are we blocking off areas? And then lastly is how we respond and try to minimize property damage or the continuation of property damage. I put together, you guys, a elected official guide, and this is kind of really the meat and potatoes of what you guys can take away. And this was, we gave these out. We try to give them out every couple of years and do small updates. So those that's been on council for a while have seen this. Most importantly, we start off with a little bit of an introduction in the beginning from the town manager. And then the first real part of this is 7 things that you guys need to know as elected officials. And importantly is you attend or be part of briefings that the town manager provides. And that's where he's updating you to what staff's telling him is going to be challenges or known situations that we're going to be faced with. At that point, we should have, as he's briefing you, we've established IEPs, and those IEPs will be given to you guys to review so that you can actually see what staff is trying to accomplish in the next 12 hours. One of the big things that we see across the board, and most of you guys know my background is fire, but also emergency management, and was emergency management for several years for a county. And challenges that we have, not only in Carolina Beach, this is every jurisdiction, is working within the system, and the system is set up for a reason. And that means that we try to find all of our resources locally, and then if we can't find it locally, we work through the county. And if the county can't find it, they find it for us through the state at what's called an eastern branch. The state's broke up into 3 branches, western, central, and eastern. So we try to find what we can through the eastern side, and then we look statewide. And all those resources come with a cost, and that's why we do that. So a lot of times what we don't realize is that we could, I know somebody at the state level, I just give them a call and they'll make this happen. And when we bypass the system, it really, then it becomes out of the system. And then at the end, it always turns into who's paying for this, And sometimes if we work the system, we can get resources that are already been paid for with no cost to the town. And then at other times, we have to make sure that they're the correct resource so that FEMA will pay us back for that post-storm if it is a federally or state declared disaster. One of the other challenges that everybody has, and this is from the county to the state to whoever, is sending that consistent message. And I know during Dorian, the council did an excellent job working with staff and getting briefed and getting that message, and it was a common message, and that's what we need to do moving forward. And that was what we talked about with our staff. So this is just a message to you guys. Jay was in the meeting, and we had a lot of conversation about we all got to say the same thing. So as we're pushing out that IEP, there's bullets in there, and we may know things in the background that may be happening 12 or 24 hours out, but those aren't messages that we need to be pushing at that point because things change so rapidly during the storm. So the expectation is that we're pushing these out from the briefings. We push these out as a common message. And we put a lot of effort in our EOC after Florence. Everybody can remember with Florence, we struggled with getting information from social media timely and then turning it around timely. And staff was kind of overwhelmed. And some of the lessons learned that the state pushed out, it wasn't just us, was having a social media coordinator, having a PIO, that's their job. And we learned that, and we've worked through that, and we have that position ready to be established. And the goal is rumor control. And it's not that we get on social media and try to combat comments. We constantly get on social media and say, reference the town's page, reference our Facebook page. This is where the latest and greatest is coming out. And then we have to get that latest and greatest out. And we realize that. And I think Florence, we did a huge improvement, and I think it's going to be even bigger if we ever see another storm. So I doubt we will, but if we do, that's what we'll do. So most importantly for you guys, ask questions. I know you're going to hear stuff that we're not going to hear, and we encourage, I know the manager would greatly appreciate that the questions come to him and give us a chance to answer them. Because I would almost guarantee you that when people are saying something's not being done, it's already been planned out. It's just maybe not been executed yet. There again, life safety, property conservation's at the end. So sometimes what may be a priority to you because there's water in your front yard, but if we don't stop another effort that's going on, we could have actually life safety issues. So letting the manager brief you guys on that, and when you ask those questions, that gives you the ammunition to go back and tell the citizens why we're doing certain things. So, and then again, working through that, the EOC manager, which will be Ed or Bruce, unless one of them is not available at the time, and then the manager would designate who's the next in charge. And then most importantly is just understanding what our priorities are. And I think during Florence, if I had to look back and say one of the biggest challenges that I did see, other than the social media, was everybody understanding the priorities together as a team. Because unfortunately, everybody has a different priority, and then as a team, we have to decide which priorities need to go first. And then as we do that as a team, then that becomes where that number, I guess, 4 message would come, is we're sending a consistent message. So when we start sending inconsistent messages, then the town citizens start feeling like that we're not organized. And in most cases, like Florence, we were pushing out IEPs. We were ahead of almost everything with the storm, but perception's a huge thing, and that's what we have to do with a consistent message, is make sure that we're being very consistent with our message, so that the perception from the citizens is that you guys have control of the storm, because you feel like you have control because staff is on it. And that's our number one goal. And why we're here today to kind of help you guys with this. Before we get into questions, I'm going to just pop through the rest of the book. I told the manager I'd keep this to 10 minutes, and I've never done that in my life. So this here will walk you through the NIMS part of what NIMS is, and kind of help you. The chain of events, I kind of summarize that for you, how things roll out with us doing a control group meeting and establishing objectives and priorities. And it talks about state of emergencies, how they're defined. And I think that this council has got very versed. Between Dorian last year, most of you guys were in the process of either running or already elected, so you saw the state of emergencies and how they worked. And then also, we just went through it with the COVID stuff. We're still in the middle of it. So, but it's there to help you understand it, and Kim can also help you with that process. And then it walks through the 4 parts of a disaster. And it's important we understand that, because what happens is, even as citizens, we only focus on the response. And all the things that happen before the response or during or after the response is really what makes or breaks us as a town and as a team. How we prepared, how we did mitigation efforts, and then even in the recovery part, how we come out of that recovery and learn from it, and then start back with the mitigation process again. So I know that was like a 10,000-foot view. The most importantly, I wanted to hand you this book, but I didn't want to hand it to you without a little bit of background. So I'll answer any questions.
I have a question for you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
What are you anticipating this year in regards to events and storms?
The forecast has an active season. I know in the emergency management world, and you've probably heard it before, and if you've ever talked with Steve Path with the National Weather Service out of Wilmington, one of the things they always say is it only takes one storm. You know, we could predict 50, and all 50 hit Florida and Georgia and Maryland and everywhere else. But if one storm hits us, that's the only storm that matters. And I know that's a generic answer, but they are predicting an increased storm this year, as in the numbers and all, and that's all based off whether we're in a La Nina or not, however you say it, type weather pattern. And so, yeah, we are preparing, given what's happened in 2020 already, and I say that jokingly, but staff went into this exercise going, it wouldn't shock us at this point to have something major happen, but we're definitely, it's better, it's like when you're prepared, it usually don't happen, so that's what we go off of.
Any more questions?
I don't have a question. It's more of a comment. First of all, I learned a lot in that meeting, and I greatly appreciate it. It looks like they have a well-oiled machine. They have 5 sections. Everybody knows exactly what they're doing in this section, and it's pretty impressive. I did ask a question, though, in the meeting, and the question was, do elected officials ever get in the way? And after the laughter settled down, I
They did
realized
not
that maybe
laugh.
we do get in the way. So I just wanted to bring that up. Let them do their job, period.
So that's a good point, Jay. And so our EOC manager is the town manager, which is not the same for Curry Beach.
Yeah, and it's because their form of, how their form of
Right.
government works. And, well, that and how your emergency operation plan is set up. And in most cases, I'm going to be careful how I say this because you just said Curry Beach's name. It's not always conducive for an elected official to be in charge of a disaster. And history has said that because sometimes you are working more directly for the citizens than we are. We establish our priorities, and if we make you mad, we'll talk about it after the storm, but we got to deal with life safety. You guys can end up getting a lot of political pressure from not only citizens but businesses, and those pressures get kind of tough on you. And my message to you would be, let us take that pressure off of you and let the system work. Come be at the briefings, sing the same song we're singing, help us push. Even if we disagree in a briefing, we still got to walk out and send a message and then figure out how we clean that up, either post-storm or at the next briefing, because we're not always going to agree. We don't agree in the room together sometimes, but when we decide this is the mission that's going to be run for the right reasons, whether I agree that's the right mission at this minute, it just needs to move forward. It's no different in any disaster. But like I said, my clear message to you guys is let us help you. You ask the right questions to the manager and push the right comments to the manager that you're hearing on the street. Let us help give you the right answer. And at the end of the day, it protects you, and then it lets us protect the town.
Very good.
Add one last thing, Chief. It's just a recommendation. I think that's a good 5-minute video on the fire department's page of just say, hey, maybe you should have a handful of sandbags. Maybe you should have 2 days worth of supplies and a couple of gallons of water, just so that way people would kind of have that friendly reminder of, hey.
Yeah, we're at that point that we really need to start preaching that self-sustain for 72 hours. And you're 100% right. Right now, it's probably more important because of with COVID, it seems to take longer to get things, and who knows if we do take a step back with the governor's orders, do we have another shortage of certain items? So, yeah, that's a good message that we probably, or probably, we will start pushing out, is that preparation for 72 hours. And we do know that emergency management has some changes this year due to COVID with how they're sheltering. Shelters can't be at the same capacities. We learned a lot, and we're going to summarize that, and that's something that we don't have all the answers. And I think July 1st, we're supposed to have a little training session with them. And at that point, maybe we can push out an email to you guys of what's changed at the county level. And some of it's changing daily, so it's kind of hard to put it out. But we do know sheltering for everybody in the state is going to be an issue if COVID is still on top of us during a hurricane.
Well, thank you, Chief, and I just want to say that I've been here through quite a few hurricanes and several with you, and I have all the confidence in the world that you guys know what you're doing, and we appreciate all the hard work, so you don't have to worry about us interfering, that's for sure. We're going to follow whatever you tell us is the safety for our town.
Can I remind you that? No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
No, thank you guys. No, like I said, Dorian went a lot better, and I think we as a team are doing a lot better. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so who gets to present the land use plan update? It says Jeremy, so, but I don't see him in here, so I assume somebody else drew the short straw.
Thank you. Curie Beach always had a powerful statement about how you survive, how if you stay on the island during evacuation, or how you can, what it's going to be like to survive after or an event or during an event. And I was reminded of that last night or yesterday when my HVAC quit working and my family, I thought that was the end. Yeah. We made it through. So. At the last meeting, Town Council requested an update on our land use plan, and planning staff has put some slides together, and I'm going to walk through those with you. We started out with a heavy public involvement. We wanted to get the business owners, the citizens, all the stakeholders involved. So government agencies, we brought Matsu in, some of the state agencies in, and started getting feedback. We put a public survey out, put a lot of effort into getting the right people on our steering committee. Our consultant worked with us on establishing a separate website. More and more we were using social media to get information out. We did hold a couple of public workshops, and then public comments was utilized at a good portion of our meetings that we had. So the steering committee, dedicated, appointed volunteers, having regular meetings since November 2018. Originally, we thought this would be a little under a year process, but Jeremy and I have been through this before, and the last one was, we started in 03 and we finished in I think our plan was in 07, 08, so it can go on, and that is from all the various perspectives and backgrounds and information that you're getting in. So you do, it takes a while to process all that and really find out where we want to be as a community as we move forward with the land use plan. So the community was very involved, over 100 folks at each of our public workshops where they're giving input, and then they're giving that input, and the consultants putting that together with our staff and trying to put it in a framework where the committee can go back and discuss it and find out what we want to keep and what we want to, how we want to move forward with that information. So all that happened over the last couple of years. 2020, we were on the path to winding down on the land use plan. We had a joint meeting with council and P&Z. February, planning and zoning heard public comment. March, the consultant incorporated changes based on those comments, and in June, this month, last week, P&Z recommended approval of the plan. Now, they did have a few changes to the plan from the committee, and I'm going to flip through those. And Jeremy has all his little icons on here, so he's got his fingers crossed here. But July, present the plan back to town council, so later this month or early next month, second Tuesday, it would come back to you. And then it has to be on that Coastal Resources Commission, and that meeting would be November is when they would get the official approval from the state. And so we'd have a state CAMA approved land use plan. Some of the changes that P&Z put that the committee hadn't changed and P&Z did change, and some of these, when you get all that information initially, a lot of it is it's big picture is like how would you build Carolina Beach? Well, a lot of Carolina Beach is already built out. So what we don't want to do is create a lot of non-conforming situations or push us in, and the land use plan doesn't create zoning, but it does push you in a direction to change that or that zoning ordinance. So for the north end, it's not surprising that a recommendation is like, well, hey, maybe we should look at lower density, but it's already pretty much built out up there. So that was one of the changes is let's leave the density alone up on the north end. Another area is like there was still quite a bit of property in here to be developed in Wilmington Beach on the west side, and that was one of the recommendations on the land use plan is, well, maybe we should look at a lower density back there, and it makes sense that you have your higher density up towards the ocean front, and as you go back, you lower your density. But if you look at the folks who were here and adopted our zoning back in the 70s and 80s, that's how we've built out, and they didn't use that staggered. They went north to south with our zoning districts versus east to west. So P&Z recommended moving that back to match. Basically, all these changes are going backwards, or not backwards. They're going back to what our zoning ordinance looks like and what our zoning map looks like is what they're recommending. So same thing here is ensuring that this would be what the land use plan recommended, and you got a lot of small little districts or nodes that the consultant had recognized based on comments, and P&Z said, hey, let's keep the land use map consistent with our zoning. So that you'll see that change in there. A little bit of change in the R3 area, and P&Z said, nope, let's make sure that land use plan map matches identical to R3, which is our really, if you've been here a while, you know that's a protected, coveted area where you have a lot of citizens that want to keep that characteristic of R3 that live in there. Heard that for years and years. There was a gateway corridor, and this was some comments from the different meetings, and that was removed by P&Z. And the gateway was basically we're looking at more of a form-based zone that would be implemented where you're pushing buildings to the street and landscaping and infrastructure for pedestrian facilities and parking and vehicles and everything towards the back. So instead of having that gateway, we kept the P&Z is like, let's keep it the same. So you have your 10,000 square foot lot, and basically for commercial zoning districts, you have a boxed out landscape buffer, but you have the flexibility to put your parking where you want it versus a form-based zone was one of the ideas that was originally presented in the land use plan. And that's popular in a lot of newer communities that are building up their downtowns. They'll do a form-based zone and code where you have that similar look going down through your downtown or your highway business district. Medium density, I think there was a range, and P&Z said, hey, let's look at our medium density. Most of the lots in Carolina Beach are 5,000 square feet. So the 9,000, yes, there's some that are a little bit over, but we're pretty consistent at 5,000. So I think they just wanted to clean that up. Some of this, the new language here is just a little less restrictive, discouraging development in areas versus restricting development. So looking at options for land around the lake. So these are just some of the policy language that P&Z tweaked a little bit. before coming back to you. T1, again, just matching T1 with existing, and versus having these little nodes is what the original land use plan said. Oop, and that was it.
Can you back up to that T1 slide? One more.
One more.
We had looked before about taking that CBD zone back down to, what is that, Pelican? Right there, just from the Scotchman south rather than the Scotchman north, and adding a couple of those purple boxes into the TI zone.
I think I got a picture of that.
The CBD zone north of Pelican, I mean, are we really a commercial business district when you pass the Scotchman?
Here we go. So Pelican Lane, I know there's been a lot of conversation about that. Should the CBD end right here, and then T1 start after that? I think that.
So what happened in the past, the fellow that built that one mixed-use residential house where he's got a financial planning office down below, he struggled for 2.5 years trying to figure out how to build an income-producing residential property. Code said you had to have, zoning said you had to have commercial. So he ended up coming up with a use in there. And so that central business district zone is just a lot more commercial than the T1 zone. And when you go north of Pelican, right there across from Nolly's, from Nolly's south, it's definitely more of a central business district. But we lost all those hotels and now parking. And, we had talked, and I know Wilcox and I went around and around it 4.5 years ago. And he said, no, I don't want to do anything until we change our land use plan. The time to do it would be to change the land use plan and make that line straight. Everyone was in agreement that's probably a good idea. We need to do it when we do the whole land use plan. So while we see some consistencies throughout our current zoning versus the proposed land use, that's the one that had jumped out a few times. If you look at the picture on the left, it's a clean line across Pelicans. If you look at the one on the right, it just jogs up. The town owns one of those lots. It's a parking lot. I think we'd have to look at what that does maybe to the one commercial restaurant business there on the harbor. I can't remember if it's in or out, but I would ask the council at some point when we start looking at that to consider that central business district. It's just a different use when you cross into a central business district. So I just
I mean, you want to cap that off or
I would
move
cut it-
T1?
Personally, I would cut it right at Pelican, and everything is south of Pelican. It's a nice clean line. And then when you go to the T1,
Okay.
because the zoning requirements in the central business district to allow some of those transitional tourist T1 zones is a lot tougher to do. It's tougher to do that. And I guess you have to ask how much of that commercial creep do you want to see going north? As much as we protect the R3 zone in residential, that T1 zone is predominantly residential. You do have the use for a commercial use as
Right.
an option. In CBD, it's required. In CBD, you've got to have commercial. And I know the guys that bought the Mermaid have struggled with that. It's just a different feel. So I'd ask you guys to think about that as we move forward to some kind of, we're not voting on this today, right?
This will come back to you in July, but yeah, we're looking for comments like that today.
Well, it's really kind of hard to look at this and tell where that line is to the far right. Is that Pelican where it's going straight across, or is that?
I think
Pelican.
the middle map tells you what I'm hearing from Ed is that P&Z came back and said they would prefer the new land use plan mirror the existing zoning map.
Yes, sir.
So if you look at that center map, the existing zoning map, that's going to show you, that's Pelican. So you have two lots just north of Pelican. So basically you've got the Scotchman and Nolly's, and everything south of that, that's Pelican. So that stuff.
And it's all CBD now.
Right. What's CBD also is the 8-unit condo building that's on the corner, the yellow one, the little single-family house, and one more lot north of that is all CBD.
Stoked in CBD?
I think they are.
They are.
They are, but I think you're allowed in a T1, he can have that restaurant, I think.
T1 allows for a lot of commercial uses, and restaurants are one of them.
But it's an option. whereas in CBD, you are required to have a commercial component. And that's just more difficult. And it's only, you're talking about 3 or 4 lots there. It's just a clean.
That was going to be my question. You said it only affects 3 or 4 properties?
Yeah. I think, I mean, Ed would have to
So-
double check that.
So we could bring that back, and
I'm just saying to look at it.
Councilman Shuttleworth's right. There's challenges with CBD, but there's a lot of things that developers like about it too. There's no setbacks there, and density is out the window, but it's based on parking. So
Well, we've also given a parking waiver to almost every CBD project that's ever come in. If they're in the core business, if they're in the downtown boardwalk district and they don't have parking, we've said, I will give you a waiver.
the
So
if you're
I'm a land
commercial,
developer and I'm in the CBD and I'm on that fringe property, I'm gonna be like, you gotta give me 0 lot line. I don't need to worry about parking. Everyone else for 50 years has gotten a waiver. And then council said, well, we don't have to give you a waiver. Well, you gave everyone else a waiver. I mean, it just gets very muddy. And when you start building 0 lot line in central business district and you start creeping that north, I think that's a lot different than.
So you're suggesting leave it like it is? Is that what I hear you saying?
No, I'm suggesting it needs to go back to the way the land use map had it, in that where the Sea Witch dot is and that pink line, purple line, it just stopped at the Pelican.
Right,
CBD
or
stopped.
existing zoning is.
No, the existing zoning goes north of the Pelican, and I'm saying drop it back down to Pelican.
You're saying make Pelican the line.
That's what
make
I'm,
Pelican the line. Okay.
that would be my suggestion and.
We could
So if you
definitely
could
bring
zoom
that-
in on that, not tonight, but when you show it to us and let us
Right.
see what properties those are. It's really hard. That was one of my hardest things during this whole land use plan. We see these, these maps just colored, and it was just very difficult to see what properties that are.
The only other comment I had, Ed, is when you go back and look at those neighborhood commercials along Lake Park, south of the lake, right? We have, like, the laundromat is down there, and there was the one parking lot across from one of the towers that we had talked about allowing some of that neighborhood commercial to develop within those, right? And we currently have that. They currently have some neighborhood commercial. So if you want to do pedestrian disbursement and you want to disperse and make it easier for people to go with a bike or on foot to some of these, we're gonna have to offer some small, less intrusive commercial. I'm not talking about heavy and commercial, but I think that was the point of the neighborhood commercial on some of that Lake Park, which I do think helps your traffic flow. Otherwise you're forcing all businesses to be in that central business district. And historically, we've got, whether it's the veggie wagon or the laundromat or the Scotchman, or further down there was Pops, one of Pop's places. There's a few other opportunities down there. It may not be bad to have a small little neighborhood coffee shop or a surf shop. Or I know the North End guy, he's getting a lot of business, and it's nice. I see a lot of people walking there. They don't have to walk all the way down. They don't have to get in their car and drive from, Alabama, or ride a bike from Alabama all the way to the grind on Lake Park, which is not the most safe place to ride a bike. So those would be the ones that I would like us to look at. The only other question I had, Ed, is where did we come out on heights on the Lake Park? If we're gonna do away with the gateway corridor, was there a recommendation to address heights in that Marina Business District and or the Lake Park area? Because I know originally they had talked about allowing higher heights, and I think that's something that the community just needs to have a discussion about.
Well, there was actually a push for lower height limit from the Land Use Plan Committee, which I could not see lowering it from what it currently is, which is
50
50 feet now. They wanted it to go to 30.
I thought there were some areas in there where they talked about going higher.
And I was looking at Joe Dan and Mayor, because I'm not sure if they changed that at all in the meetings, but the current zoning is 50 feet, and then if you do some additional setbacks, you can go up to 60. But I'd have to go back and find out if that has changed at all. I know during the last P&Z they didn't talk about it, but I'll find out.
I think it's still at 50 feet. I know, Jay, you were on that, and that was before you were elected.
Right now.
But there was a push for lower, and that would make properties like mine and the hardware store non-conforming. If, let's say, it was tore down by a hurricane, it would not be able to be rebuilt.
I was most interested to see if there was a discussion about higher.
I didn't hear one.
60, 70, 80 feet, because I know that there have been some.
You remember, Joe Dan? I don't remember there being a discussion about
We never discussed making it higher. That,
Okay, good. I'm just.
It was
had a
just
few
lower.
People asked me, and I said, I think that's going to be a hard fight if
the,
you ask for.
the biggest push that I recall on that was just mixed use along the corridor.
Is this on our website, Bruce, Ed?
This is on our website, and we also have a CAMA land use plan website that our consultant developed for. So we can push both of them out if that's what you're.
We need to get this out, because I know that Denze with the Cape Fear Realtors wanted to see our final presentation that'll come to council, so I'd like to, direct him to the website to look at it and let the Realtor Board see if they have any comments. How was the planning and zoning meeting attendance? Was there anyone there? Was there any public comment?
Gloria, do you know if we had any? I'll find out.
Okay.
Steve, do you ask that because of the Tucker lot and the Harris Teeter lot?
Yep. No, the Harris Teeter and yes, because several people have approached me and said, hey, how would council feel about that? And I said, it's not a matter of how council would feel, it's a matter of how the public would feel,
Right.
right? If you come in and try and do a hotel there at 75 feet, or a big condo, a big apartment, I've had a couple of apartment guys ask me, would the town support a 5-story apartment building? I said, wow, that's.
And could that not be done with a CUP?
In highway business, other commercial business districts, you can only go 50 feet, and then with a 1-for-1 additional setbacks, you can go up to 60.
So I understand what you're saying about the apartment, because I've been asked that same question, and that's not that's kind of a need for our community as well, so.
You're talking, they're rental property, not short-term rentals, but. affordable
Long-term apartment leasing. yeah.
Workforce housing. And in order to do that, you've got to have some density, and I told them, I just don't know that that's going to fly in this community right now. I mean, I just don't think the community, the support to get above 50 feet is going to be a pretty big push. I mean,
What kind of height limit would they need?
5 stories, so 60
60
65
feet.
feet. And then, and you can't afford, when you're paying the land cost, you
Right.
can't afford to pick. It's one thing if you're doing a smaller building and you need to pick up 2 feet, but if you're talking, you want, the whole purpose is to get some density, they've got to get, in today's market, you need 9-foot ceilings, you need some fire, you need some parking. If you do 4 floors, it's just, you start pushing over 50 feet.
And I do know that some affordable housing owners have looked at that property as well, and which is something we've talked about on the island, but where's that location?
If you look at the one apartment project true apartment over by Food Line, they're higher than that. They were able to get that, so you just have to look at.
Paradise
how that
Cove.
would work, and if that's a community, something the community would support. It's just, so that was the reason I was asking. So at this point, the recommendation is 50, not to reduce it to 35 and stack it as you get off, but also not to go higher.
Would y'all be interested in us bringing that item back to council meeting, or with some options, or you want to leave that alone?
So if an owner bought that property and needed more height, what would they have to do to go through that process? Could they ask for something to be changed?
Yes, you can still amend. In fact, the amendment process for the land use plan is a little cleaner. It can be done at Braxton Davis's level versus having to go through the CRC, and they would still need to also amend our zoning ordinance to increase that height.
So part of that, those properties over there, Joanne, I think are in the AE zone, which alters or restricts some of your construction, right, on what you can do on the ground floor. So just from a economic development point of view, if you can't have all of your ground floor use and you're limited to a certain height, it really is going to drive down what can happen there. That may or may not be a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, it is what it is. So as a community, we need to understand that. And if we're trying to do economic development, or you're trying to look at workforce housing, not subsidized housing, but just something that's affordable for, I don't, yeah. I'd rather not.
Is that AE? I thought that area was out of the flood zone.
Part of it's in the AE zone. Not a lot, but part of it. And you just, it's something we need to have a community discussion about. I'm not proposing anything as far as increasing it or not increasing. I'm just saying it's a fact that's out there. And when you look at the really commercial intensity and economic development, meaning tax base for us, what's out there that can be done that's a relatively simple process, there's only a couple of tracks available. Unless you go downtown into the boardwalk area, which is just a different opportunity, right? I mean, if you look at what's out there, the town's going to need to think about that. And it's also going to end up with traffic, right? I mean, so. And what we've done with the harbor district, allowing a more industrial and true harbor uses there impacts your view corridor from those parcels. So when you start thinking about, it's a different feel.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, we'll look to see that next month. Hurricane building damage review. Who gets that?
Mayor, Council, the title of this is Existing Buildings Damaged During Hurricane Florence, but it's really our buildings in our downtown that have entered their close to end of life. So they've been the ones that we've been working with the property owners for last several years on repairs, and this became more prevalent in the time after Hurricane Florence. And the first one on here is the one that we actually purchased downtown, and there's several options we've looked at for this property as far as demo, storage bathrooms. It would need, at a minimum, if we're going to utilize it, a partial roof replacement. You can see the side of it there. You can see some of the roof damage. And then this is looking on the boardwalk, and it's difficult to see, but some of the roof is peeled up there. So the biggest expense there, if we were going to make use of the building, would be the roof, and some of the floor system would have to be redone, but it
Ed, I
could-
thought when we looked at that realistically, the cost to make that workable for any use other than storage. I mean, there's plumbing problems, electric problems, roof problems, truss problems. It's a tear down. We bought it as a tear down. We had greater ideas to expand that whole area down there. Personally, I think we should be leading by example and get rid of it. I mean, it's just an eyesore. It's a health hazard. It's dangerous, and we're not going to spend 3 times the money to fix it up. I would not support spending that kind of money to fix it up for a 1 year, or a 2 year, or a 3 year hold. And if we want to go after other property owners and ask them to maintain their property,
Yeah, I'm not ready to move forward with this yet. I think in the next couple of months we'll have some ideas. But this is an old picture, right? Surely this is not what it looks like right now. I mean,
That
I see the
is-
building inspector behind us.
That
Least we can
is-
do is cover those windows up with some kind of nice paper or something.
why wouldn't we just tear it down?
What's the
Well,
cost?
I don't know that we're ready to do that yet.
What's the cost to tear it down, roughly, Steve?
Let's have that discussion. Why wouldn't you be ready to do that?
I'm not ready to have that discussion right now.
And this is for discussion, so we could always bring that back at a later meeting if y'all wanted to look at that option.
Steve, I'm
Uh,
curious, what's the cost would be to tear that down? 20 grand, 50 grand?
No, not
It's gonna be
even.
more than that.
No way.
Really?
7, 8 grand, 9 grand.
I don't know if I know we put money in the loan for the tear down when we bought the property, so there is money there if we wanted to.
Call Chuck at Four Seasons Demo, and he would tell you. Do we have a backhoe? Doesn't the town have a backhoe?
We've got a couple.
Costs the town the labor then, and then it costs you the hauling cost. But if you have a professional do it like Four Seasons, you're probably $9,000.
Yeah, that building is decrepit. The floor's gone, the ceiling's gone. I mean, it is a health hazard also.
Okay, we can look at that for, and again, we're not going to do a vote today, but we can bring that back when y'all are ready to.
I mean, I would think it would probably be in the off-season where we'd even think about doing that anyway because of the traffic down there. And we'll know our options a little better in the next couple of months.
Right, we should look at it in the.
Yeah, I'm not saying I want to put any money in fixing it, that's for sure. But do we have something in the windows covering that, or some kind of, I don't know what they call it,
Just paint the windows.
something,
Hurricane
and
preparedness posters.
I'd love to see us require that down in those empty buildings, because I see the next one coming
I
up.
like Lynn's
looks the
idea
same.
right there. Hurricane preparedness posters.
Or just, how they put the brown paper in the windows, or maybe, and that'd be great for your committee, Jay. Maybe they paint on it or put some kind of art in those windows.
That's actually one of building inspector's recommendations. So we can move forward for all these buildings. So we'll move forward on that. And then we can work with, if we want to do decorative, we can do something.
It needs something,
Right.
even if it's plywood.
We have been working with these owners for a number of years, and they own a number of properties all over the island. We have worked with them on some demolitions, and they have moved forward on a lot. This is one that they have remaining. Recently, they've had some family issues. They're up in New York. We still have fire inspection that needs to be done on this building. They have been periodically making repairs. This one's a little challenging because everybody knows where this one is in our off North Pavilion, but it's connected to a lot of other properties, and a condemnation and demolition process is a potential. The other potential is continuing to repair, and you'd have to stay under the 50%. The problem with the condemnation and demolition is that these buildings are intertwined, and it gets a little tricky with how you can do that without impacting those other buildings.
So just a
And
question.
this is the one with the roof failure? This is the one we've been dealing with for 7 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is a total frustration I have, and I hear from a lot of people wanting to do economic development around the community. When they drive up and down and see our dilapidated old buildings and don't understand why, and I thought we worked with our town attorney to put some teeth and expedite some of these processes.
Okay.
And so for us to take years, I mean, either do it or don't, and I understand it's a connected building. Okay, it's fine. They figured it out in other places. We can certainly figure it out. It's just another, not only is it an eyesore, it just devalues everything. It's a health hazard, and there's been no commitment from that property owner to come in and have a reasonable workout. Come to us and say, here's my 6-month plan, I need 2 years, I need whatever. It's been going on for 7 years. It's just terrible. And when I drive up and down residential areas and I see junk boats and junk cars and stacks of old crumbled stacks and piles of lumber and junk, I don't understand why we're not out there on code enforcement telling them get rid of it or we're gonna haul it off and bill you. That's what we spent 2 years ago. We spent a lot of time with Ms. Fox and you guys modifying and expediting those enforcement procedures. People are making investments in our community. We talk about economic development. We want to move forward on the right things. We're telling short-term rental people, pay your ROT, but we don't do our part to follow through and say, take care of your property, or, you know, we don't have any design codes, all right? We're not telling people what they got to paint it, but come on.
Ed, is this property for sale? Do you know?
I don't know if it's
No.
not.
Is this the property that I heard a couple of years back that there was the design made to put bathrooms in? If we ever looked at possibly getting a building on the boardwalk. Are you familiar with that, any of you?
No.
I believe this one's the one.
Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
isn't this the one that backs up to Miles's old building on the other side?
I think
sir.
so.
Right, right.
So
It's
there
got a
was a
roof- It's got a
plan-
roof that's failed. It's got walls that, I don't know if they fixed it, but the last time I walked by there 2 years ago with Miles, he was telling me, he said, look, I spent $300-some thousand. I'm trying to do a retail, and the guy in the building in the back, the roof's caved in and the wall's collapsing. I mean,
I know years ago there was a plan drawn up, and I think it might have been this building, to put bathrooms in an existing building on the boardwalk instead of building a new structure like we talked about in front of Fork and Cork.
Right.
You know, I just didn't know if that was still some kind of possibility.
Okay, we'll reach back out to
I
the
know, I'm
owners
looking at
and
the
see if we can get,
Building guy in the background, but I mean, you might say it's not even worth looking at.
Right.
You know. I think Greg Reynolds may have drawn that plan.
okay.
So what is the process of getting a building condemned? I know we talked about this before. There's got to be a process.
There is a process. Once you start that with our code, you have to continue by state law. So the condemnation would occur, and then if they were not willing or able to make the repairs, willing or able, they couldn't do it with staying under 49% because a lot of these are non-conforming or have non-conforming issues, then they would have to demolish. That would mean if they wouldn't do it, typically we would have a hearing and council would allocate the funding to demolish and we would lien the property.
What's that time frame look like, Ed?
That takes 90 days is, so three months.
Yeah, I think the process forces their hand to do something,
Yeah.
right? And to have a building, getting back to Steve's point, sitting there for 7 years is, to me, it's a little mind-boggling, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, at 7 years, right, you've shown
Yeah.
that you've given the property owner.
It's a will or
Chance,
won't,
right.
really, at that point.
Yeah.
Choosing not to.
Yeah, and you can't, my opinion on, we need to push some of these forward because you can't, the first step in revitalization of anything is you got to get rid of the old stuff that the
Eyesores.
owners are not taking care of.
Eyesores.
just so y'all recall, the reason we have 2 large vacant lots down in the Central Boardwalk District, and then we have the small one that we have the photograph on, we have the lots right next to the building we just talked about that we own, we have the one with the Fork and Cork. Those properties all had buildings on them.
That's right.
And a number of years ago, council came back, long before my time, came back and said, you either fix them up or tear them down, and we're going to do it. So all those buildings got demolished. And some of those current property owners have been sitting on those vacant lots after they were forced to demolish, waiting for reinvestment. So not to have the consistency with people like this particular lot, it just doesn't seem like we're playing the same game that we were a number of years ago. If you want redevelopment, if you want to see improvements, sometimes you have to take a little action.
I was about to say the same thing, Steve. About 15 years ago, I don't know, Ed, were you here then? They certainly did make those property owners tear those buildings down.
Maybe it's time to start
Landmark,
again.
I remember.
Maybe it's time to start again.
Do something. Give our staff the teeth to make something happen. That was the idea when we modified the process before. And we can't keep hiring a building inspector and a code enforcement officer and not give them the tools that they need to do what the community has asked to have happen. So just, we need some backbone to push through and say, hey, buddy, do it.
What do you need from us to move forward?
I think what I'm hearing is we'll get back with the owners and talk to them about their options of giving us a 6-month plan to either
See,
repair or we'll,
No offense, Ed, but we don't want to get back to the owners anymore. Just send them a notice. If you don't, because if you'll get back to them, it'll take 2 weeks to set up an appointment, and then someone will cancel, and then it'll be another month, and blah, blah, blah. Just send them a note. Say, here's our code. That will generate a phone call pretty quick.
Send it to all of them.
So I guess the easy question would be, are they in any violation of codes or not? I mean, are they
the
public safety issues?
The building inspector's been in there. We do need to do a fire inspection of the building. So I think that's step number one, is going back and finalizing our inspections.
So I think you're hearing us say we want them brought up to whatever code they need to be.
Got it.
Building down there.
Right, force
That's
the rules.
easy enough.
Force the rules.
Will do.
Is that what he's hearing us say, gentlemen?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. We will move to the next one, and you'll probably all recognize this building. This is where we had our ocean rescue for a number of years, and we moved out of here, and the owner entered a contract to renovate this to become a restaurant, and my understanding is that fell through, and so it's no longer being renovated, and it's continuing to decline in its status. So there are the cost of the repairs is basically more extensive than what the owner wants to spend on the building. So he's looking at either selling or demoing, and so we could handle this in a similar fashion or as the other building as well. All right, and no comments on this one. I'll keep going.
I think the comments are the same.
Yeah.
Same.
You'll hear
One of
the
those
same from
buildings.
us.
And then this one is off of Cape Fear Boulevard. And on Cape Fear down here, this space is still open and operational as retail. On the side here, this is where Tony Savani was in past seasons. That has been closed. And there are major repairs that are needed in that section of the building. Likewise.
So on a situation like that, Ed, if they have an occupant and they're doing something, if they're not trying to occupy it and major repairs, do we just tell them they can't occupy it until they do the repairs? Is that, I mean, right?
Yes, sir. Right now, they will not be, they won't be able to occupy that building.
So we as a community don't have any exterior, it's not a code issue, but we don't have anything that says, you know, you need to keep your building up to some semblance of maintenance, right? I mean, we don't have anything in the code like that.
There's no aesthetic standards, but there's just
So
code
if there's a,
safety
this porch
standards.
is falling down, or this deck on the back is structurally unsound, and you look at it and it's sagging, and it's been cobbled together, do we have the ability to go by and say you need to repair that?
I believe we do.
Aren't those rooms
only
in the
on that
back
one,
rented?
I-
To my knowledge, they've been rented for many years. I only know because I've been dropping people off that worked for me in the past. Are they still rented now?
There are approximately 7 units up there, and they've all been evacuated. So there's that building should be completely empty except for that front, and so those cannot be occupied because of repairs needed. So this one is similar to the others we've looked at. I think I got one more picture on here. Side view is the owner's motivated to sell the property, and it is restricted on the 50% rule for nonconformities, and he is not interested in bringing it up to standards. He's interested in selling it and letting somebody else
I know it
demolish
is listed for sale.
So we can treat that one the same as well.
What's the price?
Hmm.
What's the price?
I think it's 1, 2, or 3. Do you know?
He has come into town hall, and I've sat and talked with him, but it's been about a year ago. Yeah, it was.
I think when you see something happen at 109, you'll probably see something happen at the blue property.
Right.
And maybe.
And that's our next slide here is 109, and these owners have been working with a demolition company. I think they kind of stalled with the asbestos removal cost, but I met with them last week, and they are motivated to move forward. They also own the Mac lot, and we're still working with them on our lease agreement for the lot behind them, so that's working well. And there's a sign on it. They were closed after Hurricane Florence. This is the specific one, Mayor, that I talked to Daryl about, is covering the windows, similar to your comment before, because you can see in the building from the street view. So we will be talking to them
I
about.
think if we had a committee that was willing to do that work, I mean, I can't imagine a property owner not saying, I'm fine with that, you know, so. And I know we've got a committee that's itching to do something.
The issue with that building to me is you cannot walk down that sidewalk without the mold and mildew
Right.
smell coming out of that building
Yeah,
is
radiates.
unbelievable. I mean, we avoid it. That's how bad it smells.
Right.
If you go stand in front of it, you can't miss it.
Well, they're certainly moving forward with a tear down.
Out of all of the ones you've looked at, these folks, just from me and Daryl and Jeremy and others meeting with them, they are motivated, and they seem like they are actually moving forward. So
you think that one
I
will-
feel pretty confident that they're moving forward, but we will stay on them as well to ensure that continues. And the next one is 308 Carolina Beach Avenue North. This is the Mermaid Manor. The owners of this one, this was right on this is that one that's in the downtown, kind of right on the edge there. And it's been approved by our staff for mixed use development. We're just awaiting building plans. So the thought on this building is as soon as we get those plans, it should move forward with a demo and rebuild. And this is the one that Councilman Shuttleworth was talking about, that would be a commercial bottom floor and then residential
Is
above.
that one closed too?
Yes, ma'am.
Still condemned?
It's not condemned, but it's closed down. We haven't actually condemned it. And I can't take any credit for this. Daryl's been working really hard all over the island, so this is something that he's put together for our downtown area, and he's has been meeting with and talking to these owners and owners all over the island on
I guess that would be my follow-up question is, we've been looking at just the downtown central business district. What about some of the stuff that is throughout different parts of the residential area? I mean, there's some stuff that's pretty rough out there, and I mean, what can we do to give Daryl the teeth, or Joe the teeth to get some of these? I mean, you drive up and down some of these streets, and safety condition of some of these properties, I mean, roofs are in really bad shape, decks are in really bad shape, and they continue to rent these properties because we don't have a lot of lower affordable rentals, but the condition that some of these people are in, it's pretty bad. I mean,
Right.
what can we do to help expedite some of those enforcement issues?
We've had some success in moving forward. I think it's just the where to start, and if there's specific concerns or areas that jump out as safety issues, we can start there. Daryl and Joe get inundated with their day-to-day, and that's why I say that, because it's hard, because where do you start?
So, well, we've been asking the police to just start issuing citations on North End or on the beach or other issues down at the boardwalk if people are violating. Why are we not doing the same aggressiveness when it comes to condition of some of these properties? I mean, we are seeing more and more people make an investment in the community, long-term investments, short-term investments, and you just pick a street and go up and down and say, that's just not,
Drive around.
I mean,
Like we
if
even
there's-
talked about Russo's Hotel on Cape Fear. and the condition of that property as well. I didn't see that in this list.
I can, and we focused on just CBD, but we can do a strategy with our staff on that's consistent on how we're going to address the town, because you really have to do it one by one. It's a process that you have to follow. Make sure you check all the boxes.
So when you say a strategy, I mean, that's where, I mean,
that's where
we just develop all these strategies and policies and position. I mean, we have a policy. Just start writing some letters and start putting people on the clock.
And I hear Councilman Shuttleworth's frustration. I think what he's saying is you have code enforcement and you have inspections, just do them. Well, we don't need to drag our feet on that stuff.
I see
mean,
girls.
You want to say something?
I mean-
You want to help Ed up here? You want to give him some backup?
Mayor, council, what we've had, several houses, and unfortunately, the state of North Carolina still lets you kill yourself. You can't kill anybody else, but you get to kill yourself. So you can live as you want to live. A lot of the stuff we have taken care of, we do write letters, as long as they are repairing them and keeping up to a minimum condition, they can have them open. There are probably, I think right now I have 39 buildings that I'm actually working with the people on to get them correct. The problem is, some of them, they're limited funds. If I go after them to tear them down, once I start down that path, I have nowhere else to go. And then we have the fallout of you kicked me out of my house and then tore it down. That's where my issue is. As long as they're working on them, and we're not talking 6 months to a year, we're talking 30 to 60 days they're working on them. And we're getting those done. Up at the north end, 1800 block, those apartments, I had a structural engineer go out there Friday to do a complete evaluation of the building. And that's one that they're having to.
And that's one of the big ones, but I could tell you, if you just drive up on the north end and take a look at some of those houses, they're just in really bad shape.
And 2 of them have been torn down. There's another one scheduled to be torn down. And there's one that should have been torn down, but it's still awaiting a contractor, from what I was told.
Right, and-
So we have.
Okay,
this-
so that kind of feedback helps, because I do hear from people around the community that said, I'm tired of looking at, every time I go for a walk down my street over off of, I'll just say Harper, in that general area, I go for a walk down my street and I see 4 abandoned vehicles and weeds that are 6 feet high, and the house has a hole in the roof and no one's there, and, it's tough.
Well, what I've run into this year with COVID, nobody wanted to be out there doing the work. They're waiting till officers.
I know, and last year it was Florence, and the year before that it was something else, and I'm just telling you, other communities don't do that. They just say, I'm sorry, and I appreciate the compassion, I do, and I appreciate willingness to work with people. I do appreciate that, but at some time, you just gotta say, I get it, but I'm sorry, that's the way it is, figure it out.
And we've done that. The problem is, 2 years ago, I put in $50,000 into my budget for demo, and I got capped. Right now, currently, I have no money to do any demolition or any related posting or boarding up of any structures. So I've kind of been held, at bay with that. Problem is, when we start down that path for condemnation, I'm stuck. If it's an asbestos building, which I'm running into on some of that, you're talking $60,000 to $100,000 worth of asbestos removal right off the bat. So that's something else that we're having to get hit.
But I think there is a process, though. The process is, the first thing you have to do is identify these buildings that are out there, these homes that need help. Once the warning is submitted to the homeowner, it's their responsibility. It's not our responsibility to tear it down, but it's their responsibility to make the upgrades on their property.
Or to determine if it's worth an upgrade or a tear down.
Correct. But if they don't move, or if they don't do anything after we give them the warning, then we have to go to step 2, whatever that is. But we have to start with process number 1, identifying the buildings out there. Heck, I can tell you 3 of them right now, not too far from where I live. Is there a committee, or is there, who does this? Who goes out and say, there's a building there, and reports it to Daryl? Is it us? Is it the operations committee? Who is it?
It is normally done on a complaint basis, is what it comes through, which most people won't complain on their neighbor.
Exactly.
And that's where it runs into.
Right.
When I'm walk up on one and I see there's an issue, then I go after it immediately.
Yeah.
Problem is that, once again, it's complaint basis, and we can't really, I have to be careful that it's not targeted, and that's where we have to run into that.
What do you mean we have to be complaint-based? You can't, on your daily drive around, look at something and say, oh, that's a problem, I need to address that?
Remember, North Carolina still allows you to live the way you want to in your house. Your house is your castle. So, and unfortunately, with that rule, it's not set up that I can just go on property without having a complaint or anything else. Building inspector, I have to have a permit or from another party.
Yeah, but then
initiating
it needs to be
complaint.
Joe with code enforcement, because I understand what you're saying about North Carolina statute, but the town has statutes too, so we just need to help address some of that. I understand the code enforcement issue versus zoning compliance.
And like I said, I mean, I don't have a problem going after them, and it's like the two on Boardwalk, those buildings have been repaired. Yes, they're temporary repairs, but the problem is that 49% cost is where I'm also running into issues.
Meaning what?
On the, in fact, with Miles, actually, when the building actually collapsed on his roof,
Right.
they came over and actually took the building down, the back section of it, repaired the roof on his side, on both sides, and had that taken care of. So, and it made it where it's weather tight, which is that one right there. The problem I run into is, as long as it's weather tight and it's safe, I really don't have a reason to be in there.
Is there anything that we can add to our verbiage that gives us more authority?
Normally, if somebody gives me a complaint, then I can go forward. And
Yeah, but
that's
you,
usually-
one is code enforcement for building code. The other is zoning enforcement and compliance with, and those are more aesthetic. I get that. So we need to address that. I understand what you're saying about code enforcement. If I look at that downspout and say, well, the downspout meets all the building codes, that's great. But it may not, and the light pole, it may not meet something in our zoning code. That's what we need to focus on. So,
Yeah, I think we hear you loud and clear. I'll get with attorney and staff, and we will get together on this and report back to you on our next step on some of these.
Thanks. Is that all you got, Ed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, review of the proposed marketing budget
Oh,
2021. Huh?
oh, great. We're on a roll.
What else you got, Shuttleworth?
We're on a roll today, man. I'm just gonna tick them all off.
That's our job.
Before we leave that last, can I just, Bruce, can we make a note somewhere to add that same presentation? I'd like to see this in the fall, come back to us and see what progress we made, because I think there was clear message from council that we wanted to see some progress. And we know that those things, some of those buildings need to happen in the off-season, so I don't want it to, I don't want to be sitting here next May going, well, summer's starting and,
That's a good
all.
follow-up,
let's try to
Councilman
address it in the
Corbett.
fall.
So that'll be 60 to 90 days, so we'll get to see what you guys have come up with.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Mayor and Town Council. You have before you the marketing budget for the CVB, and a couple highlights from them they've submitted, and this is all theirs. They're not here due to COVID. But the revenue is down about 33.8% to help balance their proposed budget. They've cut marketing fees by 73%, image and video by 17.2%, advertising by 30%, a 26% reduction in salary and benefits, and they're also recommending reducing the contingency or holdback from 10% to 7.3%. It's been proposed to you. I will listen to your comments and report back to them anything or
What did they say revenue's down?
projecting 33.8%.
So now would not be, in my opinion, to be cutting back on the reserve. I would go the other direction and ask council, I was thinking 20%, but I would ask us to look at a 15% holdback, because we don't know where the revenues are going to come in for the next 12 months. And the feedback I get from a lot of residents is we're pretty busy. So if we're spending a bunch of money advertising now, what are we trying to do? Attract more people for this fall? I mean, there's just, we don't know if we're going to have schools open, if we're going to have public gatherings. We're struggling with how we even do a gathering at the lake for movies, or we've canceled fireworks not because we didn't have the revenue, but we didn't want to have large crowds. And there's all the talk about resurgence, whether it's happening or not. I personally, every year, and I appreciate the fact that they've done what they've done, but I would ask us to go to a different, and I looked at the number and I'm saying we should go back and ask them on the 440 projected to reserve $66,000, which takes it to 15%. And if they look specifically on their page 146 of our deal, they could take another 10% out of the advertising media services. That leaves them their research and online management and fulfillment untouched. But they ought to be able to squeeze another, across the board, 10% out of that. I know my friends at the CVB never like it when I do that, but that's where I'm at. I won't support a budget at this number. I would do it if we increased the reserves.
Steve, you may have this, or anybody who's has enough. So give me an idea over the last, where's this budget going? Is it up from prior years? Is it growing over time? I'm just trying to get some historical
This is
perspective.
actually a low number because they have reflected that the revenues are down. But over the last 7 or 8 years, it has gone up every year by 5 to 10 to 12%. And that is the overall collections of the room occupancy tax. And when you split it into the 2-3% sections, and we're dealing specifically with half of one of the 3%, which is our self-directed advertising, which is coordinated through the CVB. And we get self-directed advertising, and then we get activities. And there is some state statute that says what those dollars can be spent for, and we've had long discussions with CVB. They came to us last year after the storm and said, hey, we need to spend some of those reserve dollars, and we immediately said, absolutely. That's why we have it in reserve. But I've had those conversations with you guys philosophically. Do we have to keep raising it? This is actually less than we spent last year. My point is, it ought to, in my opinion, be even less, and we need to put more in reserve because we don't know what's going to happen for the next 12 months on revenues.
So what you're saying is, like after Florence or one of the hurricane events, we had to go into those reserves, and it's a good thing we had them. What you're saying is we don't know what post-COVID looks like, so
After that storm,
You're proposing holding
CVB
back
came
more.
back and said, we want to do additional, unbudgeted, increase the advertising and let people know that CB is back open for business after the storm. And it's unbudgeted, and we said, absolutely, that is what those reserve dollars were set aside for. So we had that pool of money, and we approved that. Same thing for me on this. I mean, 2 years from now, we might need some extra revenue to go kick something off. If this new normal takes another 6 months or 16 months, 26 months.
we don't know.
Well, that's a good point, Steve. I mean, I think what I see here is that 7% is what the proposal is for the holdback, 7.35%, and we were at 10 or
10% last year.
10%. So you're right. We don't know what it looks like, and next summer we could really be hurting, and we may want to advertise instead of the off seasons. We may want to advertise the summer season next year. You know, so I don't know, Jodan. What are your thoughts? I know you're liaison to that committee.
I'm in,
Is
the
that still you?
I'm in the same boat with Steve. It's economically what we want to propose for next year, even the year after. Having bigger reserves definitely can help in any aspect.
Yeah, post-COVID, we don't know what post-COVID looks like, and you may be.
We don't even know where it is.
But the thing is
You may
that's-
be advertising completely different stuff.
Well-
different activity. You know,
a good
the
point.
normal may change.
Not only that, but if we are told that it's going to be an active storm season, we don't know what kind of event that could come in to play a factor on that, and then we get a double whammy.
Mm-hmm.
If we could change that 15-20%, I'm cool with it. With that, no bigger reserve. Yeah.
And that is going to change exactly how they need to prepare this document for the advertising, for sure.
So
for
when
this
we've
budget.
run into those in the past, it's been a little bit of pushback. I think our friends at CVB do the best they possibly can, and they're very good at what they do. My suggestion would be to come back and approve a budget at $374,000 with the balance going into contingency, and ask them to cut across the board 10% in the advertising media services.
So what total percent holdback are you
15.
proposing? 15.
15,
And
which
what
is-
was the total, do we know, advertising last year, 1920?
Don't think I have that here.
I'm wondering if this number is close, or is it
Oh,
up?
no, this is a lot less than what we had last
Do you
year.
remember what it was? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
the advertising is down by 30%
Six.
this year. Yeah, they cut it by
It was
30%.
It was 6. But we haven't seen the revenues really down that, so.
I do know that after Hurricane Florence, there was a lot of people who didn't know that even City of Wilmington or Carolina Beach, Curry Beach were open for business, and that was the whole campaign where they used those holdback funds, were open for business. And so that is what we've traditionally had those holdback funds for. So,
I'm definitely fine with 15%. I think maybe we should even look at 20% right now. I mean, we have no idea what the future looks like. I mean, absolutely zero. And if you take a look at our business right now, we are extremely busy in this town. And yes, a lot of it might have to do with what they've done in the past, so kudos to them. But we have no idea what 6 months from now looks like at all. So I'm definitely with 15%, if not 20.
I'm good at 15. I'm probably good at 20 as well, like the majority wants.
So I can report back to them to,
so that was going to be my question. Do we need to make a motion on this? It says recommended motion.
well, I think if you're adopting it, otherwise I think we need to tell them they need to,
Or do you want a consensus on what you want to take back to CVB?
I've heard at least 15%. Is that,
So I need to know from you guys, do you want 15 or 20? What do you want him to go back with?
So
Steve-
20% would equal what? You got 32, 60, 70.
15% is 66. If the total budget is 440,
About
right? So you're either 88,000, 66,000, or their recommendation was 32.
so it'd be 78, around $78,000
For what?
at
20?
The
At
total
20%.
budget is 440.
right. But 20%, would be so
88.
right now the contingent. Yeah, 88 or 78.
88?
2 times 44 is 88. 20%, right? 10 would be 44, 88. What they're saying is
Yeah.
we have a budget dollar, we have an anticipated revenue of 440. The way they've presented this is, out of the 440, they would like to have us hold back 32 and spend 408. And my suggestion is you go to that 440 budget and either hold back 66, which is 15%, or 88, which is 20%, versus what they have. And so that would, if you did 88, then you take the 88 off the 440, and that tells you what they could spend. Right?
I think I'm with Jay at 20.
Let's shoot for
Steve,
20.
you have more experience with this. Does 20 bother you? What do
Oh,
you
I can
think
hear
that
the
does?
loud screaming already.
Oh, I get it.
North, I'm
No
gonna
one likes
kill you.
budget cuts.
No,
I
it's-
get it.
I mean, I understand your point. I mean, it is prudent because we don't know where we're going. What are we advertising for? I mean, we don't know, because I do see uptick in cases continually, and,
We haven't hit phase 3. I mean, our restaurants are
right.
at 50% capacity, so we're going to spend money to draw people here, and they're not allowed to do, I mean, I'm fine with 20. If one of you guys wants to make a motion, I can support that. And my suggestion would be to have them go back and rework the overall budget at 20% less with the total reserves of 20%.
I mean, that's not a huge amount, but, I mean, I know that it's not going to be well received, but,
No, but it's in the best interest for Carolina Beach.
that's right. So can I get a motion? Do you want to, let's vote on it so Bruce will have a consensus?
So I'll make a motion that we adopt 20% reduction in the advertisement budget that was proposed to us.
Motion on the floor, all in favor?
I would
Aye.
ask for a friendly amendment, just to clarify it.
And ask for an amendment to this proposal. Any
Right.
opposed? Okay. Bruce, we'll let you take that to CVB. And,
They may be
so
walking.
we'll have a presentation on our efficiency study.
Did you understand what the friendly amendment was?
I didn't hear the rest of the,
I was trying to get, just that we're seeking a total budget 440, and the 20% is to be held in reserves. not a contingency, it's in reserves. She put here a contingency, it is in our reserves.
Yeah, and Steve wanted you to add the word friendly.
No, that was the friendly amendment.
was-
Friendly amendment that we missed there.
As you know, we did an RFP for to firms to do efficiency study. We had, I think, 10 firms, all very qualified, pretty impressive proposals. The prices ranged from about 30 to over 100,000. We narrowed it down to 3 that were in the price range we thought that were close to the price range. And we formed a little committee of myself and Ed, Kim, Sheila, Debbie, and Holly. So we all looked at it and reviewed all of them and scored them. There's 2 of them that were pretty close, but the one I think we felt the most comfortable with is Evergreen. However, they were the one on the higher end of the cost. So I went back and talked with them and got them down to, they were originally at 38.5, I believe. We got them down to 30,000. We asked them to remove, they included some personnel and pay classifications, which we had just completed, so that was an easy removal. So we got them down to 30,000. They can start almost immediately, and the 30,000 includes all travel and everything in there, so there's no additional cost to.
Where are they coming from?
They're based in Florida, but I think they may have,
A bigger city, or? You know? I only ask because, I mean, it does matter, because usually they're more versed in,
yeah. Well, they've done, I mean, including your thing, some of the cities they've worked with. I mean, they've done something for the city of Raleigh,
Okay.
Lee County. We checked the references. They came back great. Nash County was one they used most recently, and they spoke very highly of them. Staff feels really good about them.
So you actually reached out to Nash County and say,
Yes, we reached out to them. They came back with real positive reviews.
were they looking for the same
They did I think,
results that we're looking for?
I think so. I think Nash County's was a efficiency, or they may have called it something different. It was a performance audit of the Nash County schools. So it was Nash County, so they did that performance audit of that, and they did do an efficiency and effective studies for the Land of Sky Regional Council, which is a different organization, but we have not waiting for their response on theirs. But reviewing their things, some of the other things they've done, they seem very
Yeah.
well fit for what.
Also, I've noticed that they've done New Hanover County.
Yeah,
It'd be interesting to see what they did for them.
yeah, and like, this is not approving the contract. We will reach out to them too, but this is just authorizing us to engage them once we have a contract in front of us.
so, just a question, when could they start and how long does it take?
So July 1st, and I believe they said they can complete it in 4 months. So we could, we'd definitely have some report back to staff or to the council with recommendations by the next budget season, so we can implement.
So when you say you took out the pay study part, what about, would they look at each department and say, maybe you could shift certain tasks to other departments, or they're still going to look at how your departments
Yeah, I think
operate?
They're going to come in, meet with council, meet with staff, follow staff, observe staff, how we do things, go through our processes, and then come back with a report telling us, here, this task should be with this department, or this could be done better this way, or could be done cost. I mean, the goal would be to maximize the services we provide with the most minimal cost. So,
And how long are they on site?
I think
Surely they're not going to follow you for 4 months.
No, I think it'll be off and on through that period. They'll come in, probably spend a couple of days, embedded with us, and then go back and then a lot of them, since they are in Florida, a lot of them will be on phones. One of the other firms we were impressed with had a really good price, but they were going to all do it remotely, and we just didn't think you could study us the way we need to be studied that way. So,
Bruce, I'll say that this exercise will tax, having done this before, it will tax your leadership skills, because it is human nature to be protective,
Yep.
right? And so the quicker, once you start, my opinion is the quicker you get in front of your staff and they get in front of their people and realize that these people are not here to harm us, they are here to help us.
Right.
And I think you have to beat that drum consistently,
Mhm.
and then it really works.
Yeah.
But if you don't achieve that and people tense up and clam up and they're not open, then you'll be fixing the wrong problems.
yeah, we actually just had that conversation yesterday and sent an email out to the staff saying this isn't about getting rid of people, this is about how we do our job better.
Right. This is improving service
Right.
for the most part.
Lynn, you were totally right, though. I mean, these people will be intimidated. You're going to feel they're going to be losing their jobs. So I think repeating over and over again that they're good, things are good, and it is important that they feel comfortable, so they do
Yeah.
open up to these folks.
Yeah, I've been through one similar where they came in and they asked you all kinds of questions. You feel like feel like you had to justify what you did for the municipality. So.
Yeah, the real goal here from a people standpoint is not necessarily to get rid of people. It's that as we grow, we don't have to add as many people.
Right.
That's really what efficiency does. It allows you to grow, provide more services, better service, without having to add people. When you have a manual process, every time you want to add something, you have to add people, right? And that's what I think is our number one goal, is to stop,
Yeah.
to control the growth of the size of government, because that's what the citizens expect us to do.
Plus the end result will make their life a lot easier.
Yes.
And we just try to maximize
They won't
service
believe it in
and
the beginning,
minimize
but it
costs.
will make it better for them.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and they're not studying your position, they're studying the job your position or your department does and how it can be done better.
That's right.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you've been through one before, because there's no need for anybody to be playing offense here. So, just everybody be open-minded, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll come out with some great ideas.
I think so.
I'm excited about it.
Me too.
So if council will authorize me to engage firm, I will
Yep.
Move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
We-
Thank you. Thank you for doing that work, and I assume you've personally spoken to them, and you feel like you can communicate well with this company?
Yeah, I had a great
That's the
conversation with
key.
them. Yeah, oh yeah, real impressed with the conversation. But,
Good.
did you want to make a motion for me to authorize me to engage this firm?
I'll make a motion to authorize Bruce to engage this firm on, I didn't get the firm name, but
Oh, it's Evergreen.
Evergreen on this project.
Motion on the table, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. Are there any non-agenda items?
I have one very small one that I need your help from, Bruce. Is we need some statement for the folks on Mackerel. They continue to come back. They come to police advisory. They've had their we all understand the situation. We discussed it here. But I'm at a point where I don't know what to tell them, right? Either we need to tell them we're doing nothing, we're looking at something, what we need some message. Would you agree, Jay? I know you're getting some of those too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just don't like leaving people hanging. If we're doing something, let's tell them what we're doing. If we're doing nothing, let's man up, tell them we're doing nothing.
Okay. I'll work with staff, and we haven't actually done anything recently on that.
Well, I know you've been busy.
So yeah, so I'll get with police chief and staff and see what our next steps are, or if there are any next steps.
All right.
I know we've had some similar issues on other parts of the city, of the town, so it's hard to, say address one without the other. So we'll get back
Thank you.
to staff, to council.
I just have one. Is it possible for, I know there's an issue down over off of Swordfish where somebody sent in an email with photos in regards to flooding in the streets and them saying that there's no stormwater or sewer system down there. Is it possible to get a list of all sections in town that do not? So that way we can see what our phases are, that, hey, we're going to look at this one in a year like we did over off of Harper?
I think we do have a phased plan, and it
It would be nice to have that as a what we're doing versus what we're not doing and where that game plan is.
We can bring that back and let you see our phases and what you, for stormwater and next infrastructure projects and what we funded in this year's budget.
Because that also, again, with the resident who emailed us, it'd be nice to say, hey, actually, we do apologize on this, but this is something that's in our 2021 or 2022 phase. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, some education would be good, because our job, what we want to do for you guys when you have plans like that is we can help communicate that, because they come to us, but we need to be educated on where those things are.
Consistent message.
Right. Consistent message, isn't that what Chief said?
The only thing I have is that we have a couple of businesses downtown that have a total disregard of COVID, and they are abusing the policy, their attendance policy. even if it's not 50%, we have some businesses that are over 100% capacity. And I've addressed it with the police chief and the fire chief, and unfortunately, as a town, we really can't manage that piece. It's tough. But I just want to go on record that these businesses it's a shame what they're doing. It is.
So-
This is how it starts.
And I have heard that too, Jay, and I don't know, Bruce, do you have any comments on that? Our ability to enforce the governor's orders are limited.
There are, we can still do the violation of the emergency orders, which is just a court date, basically, and there's Chief Spivey. So we can start citing them and give them a court date. It doesn't, not necessarily going to stop. We can't shut them down, I do not believe. I think it'll be just, yeah,
So-
we will look at it and
We could have some private conversations with a business owner and say, we've had some complaints, we'll let you know about your property, maybe you can implement some better procedures. Maybe
Okay.
try that route
Okay.
first.
we'll reach out to them.
Thank you.
Steve? Good. Okay, well, great. And Jay, I would ask that maybe you get with Daryl and talk about some of those window coverings with your committee since they'll meet next month. I think that'd be a great project for you guys to take on, if you'd be willing to do that.
We're meeting on our first meeting.
Awesome.
Very exciting.
Okay. So if you guys are ready, I'll make a motion to go into closed session to discuss attorney-client matter in accordance with NCGS 143-318.11A3. The matters being discussed include Town of Carolina Beach versus Carolina Freeman LLC, New Hanover County 18 CVS 3151, Town of Carolina Beach versus B&F Freeman LLC, NHC 18 CVS 3152, Town of Carolina Beach versus DRDK LLC, NHC 18 CVS 3153, Town of Carolina Beach versus Freeman Beach LLC, 18 CVS 3154. All in favor?